Back to Past Not Past. Today we're going to take a trip back in time, exactly 100 years ago. We're returning to the era dubbed the Roaring Twenties. A time bursting with jazz music, secret speakeasy bars, and fundamental changes that shaped modern America. Just try to imagine it. A world just waking up after a world war, suddenly exploding with energy, style, and amazing inventions. From the bold flapper fashion style to Model T cars rolling everywhere, we're going to explore what made the 1920s truly roar. If you've ever heard your grandparents tell stories about the old days, or you simply love discovering the past, then this journey is for you. Get ready to turn back the clock and step into an era full of color and upheaval. We'll start with a story that's both bizarre and revealing of the indomitable American spirit at the time. It's the story of a shadow that covered the entire nation right from the very first days of the 20s. The shadow of Prohibition and the rise of the speakeasy. The 1920s might be remembered for jazz and groundbreaking inventions, but it began with a controversial law casting a shadow over the entire United States. On January 17, 1920, the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution officially took effect. In the blink of an eye, the manufacturing, sale, or transportation of intoxicating alcoholic beverages across America became illegal. This was the beginning of a 13-year-long turbulent social experiment known as Prohibition. Those who supported this ban made many beautiful promises: a more moral, more disciplined, and more sober America. They thought they could bottle up the American spirit, but they were dead wrong. Because while the law tried to dry up the entire country, the thirst to celebrate, the thirst for freedom, only grew stronger than ever. And that's how an entire underground culture began to blossom in the dark. A hidden world came alive behind locked doors, dim lights, and whispered passwords. Welcome to the era of the speakeasy. If you've never heard of a speakeasy, imagine this: a bar disguised as a bookstore, a jazz club hidden under a bakery, a bustling night spot behind an unmarked gate. These were the secret sanctuaries of the era's roaring crowds, places where music flowed freely, just like the forbidden alcohol. And yes, the name Speakeasy came from the fact that patrons were told to speak easy when ordering drinks, so as not to attract attention. Inside these hidden gems, the atmosphere was electric. Saxophones wailed, pianos hammered out syncopated rhythms, and the dance floor was always alive with movement. Guys in suspenders and girls in sequined dresses shook off their worries as they danced the Charleston or Lindy Hop all night. For a few hours, these places made people forget the laws, the restrictions, and the reality outside. They weren't just bars, they were escapes. And even though speakeasies operated illegally, they were often the most welcoming and vibrant places in town. People from all walks of life, rich and poor, black and white, immigrants and natives, gathered together to enjoy the thrill of rebellion, the joy of music, and the simple pleasure of sipping a drink with friends. Frankly, law enforcement at the time was a bit of a joke. For every one speakeasy that was shut down, 2 more popped up. Bribes flowed as easily as the smuggled liquor. The truth was, Prohibition didn't stop people from drinking. It just changed where and how they did it. In many ways, the speakeasies became a symbol of the American spirit. Resilient, creative, and not easily told how to live. Prohibition might have tried to silence a nation, but instead it gave birth to one of the most thrilling and rebellious underground cultural periods in American history. Amazing, isn't it? A strict regulation that was supposed to suppress everything, but unintentionally created an explosive space for freedom and creativity. This is just one of the profoundly transformative aspects of the 20s. Next, we'll explore an invention, no less revolutionary, something that truly rolled America into the modern age: the automobile revolution and how it changed America forever. If there was one invention that truly changed the daily lives of Americans in the 1920s, it wasn't the radio or even the movies. It was the automobile. By the middle of the decade, thanks to breakthroughs in manufacturing, especially Henry Ford's legendary assembly line, the automobile was no longer just a luxury item for the wealthy. The Model T became the first car affordable for a regular American family. And once people tasted that flavor of freedom, there was no going back. Just picture it. For the first time in history, a regular working-class family could load everyone into their own car, drive out for a Sunday trip, and explore places beyond their town limits. A trip that used to take half a day by horse and buggy could now be completed in just 1 hour. Visiting relatives, going to the beach, driving to a local diner. It all suddenly became part of the American weekend. Suddenly, distances didn't feel so far anymore. But cars didn't just change how we traveled, they changed everything around us. As more and more people got behind the wheel, the entire landscape of America began to reshape itself. Roads that were once dusty and bumpy were now smoothly paved with asphalt. Bridges spanned rivers where there used to be only ferries. Tunnels cut through hillsides that were once natural barriers. Gas stations popped up everywhere, each a little lighthouse for thirsty engines and tired travelers. By the end of the 20s, it wasn't hard to spot bright neon signs advertising fuel, oil, and roadside snacks, even in towns you'd never heard of. This wasn't just infrastructure, this was a new rhythm of life. The car became a symbol of independence. You were no longer limited by train schedules or streetcar routes. With your own set of wheels, the open road was yours to conquer. But this transformation wasn't always smooth. In rural areas, the path to modernization was literally slow. Many country roads remained unpaved for years, even decades. Drivers often found themselves bouncing along muddy dirt roads, struggling with mud in the spring and dust in the summer. Yet, they kept driving. Neighbors helped each other pull cars out of ditches. Farmers learned to patch tires as skillfully as they plowed fields. The American spirit of perseverance was on full display. If you got stuck, someone would always stop to help. Meanwhile, cities faced their own challenges with cars. Streets that were once filled with pedestrians, streetcars, and bicycles were now congested with noisy engines and impatient drivers. Traffic jams became a regular headache. Accidents increased. Policymakers and engineers began asking tough questions. How do we control this iron horse? What rules should exist? The concepts of traffic lanes, stop signs, speed limits, and pedestrian crosswalks, things we take for granted today, all originated from this chaotic transition. However, through all those growing pains, one thing was clear. The automobile was here to stay. It didn't just change how we traveled, it redefined how we saw the world. Small towns began building motels to welcome tourists. Cities expanded outwards, setting the stage for the birth of the suburbs. Road trips became a new American tradition, and perhaps most importantly, people started dreaming different dreams. Because now the road didn't just lead home, it led to new possibilities. It's amazing to think about the freedom the car brought to a regular family, isn't it? Now, weekends weren't just about staying home anymore. This was a huge turning point, and it directly connects to how Americans entertained themselves and connected with each other through a media revolution. The media boom, when America started listening, watching, and dreaming together. The 1920s weren't just roaring because of jazz clubs and speeding cars. No, something else was booming just as powerfully. Something that would forever change how Americans connected, entertained themselves, and understood the world around them. This was the decade that radio took over American households. From 1923 to 1930, the number of families owning a radio in the US skyrocketed. By the end of the decade, 6 out of every 10 American households owned one of these fascinating new machines. It sounds simple now, but back then, it was a revolution. Just imagine, a chilly evening in 1925, the whole family gathered in the living room, eyes fixed on a large wooden box with glowing knobs. That small device, not much bigger than a suitcase, was their connection to the world. It brought breaking news, live music, baseball games, and even plays performed by invisible voices right into their living room. For the first time in history, people from every corner of the country, whether in a New York apartment or Kansas farmhouse, could share the same moment, the same emotion, at the same time. Radio became the community heartbeat, spreading across families from coast to coast. However, radio was just the beginning. If radio allowed you to hear the world, then movies allowed you to escape into it. The 1920s was also the first true golden age of cinema. Picture this: magnificent movie palaces rising in city centers, adorned with velvet curtains and glittering chandeliers. By the mid-1920s, up to 50 million Americans went to the movies each week, an astonishing number considering the total U.S. population at the time. Back then, movies were silent. Audiences watched the story unfold on screen, while a pianist or small orchestra played a live soundtrack. Emotions were conveyed through expressive faces and flickering black and white images, with inner titles filling in dialogue. People didn't just watch movies, they felt them. And then came 1927, a year that changed everything. Yeah, that was the year the jazz singer hit theaters and introduced most Americans to something brand new: talking pictures. The moment audiences heard Al Jolson's voice ring out over the speakers, you ain't heard nothing yet. They were instantly hooked. Overnight, the silent film era began to fade, and talkies became the new standard. Movie attendance exploded. By the end of the decade, movie theaters weren't just places to see a story, they were places to be swept away. The stories were bigger, the laughs louder, the tears more real. And at the heart of this entertainment revolution, the birth of Hollywood royalty. Movie stars became household names: Rudolph Valentino, Clara Bow, Douglas Fairbanks, Greta Garbo. Their faces lit up the silver screen. Their fashion choices made headlines, and their off-screen romances sparked national obsession. For millions of Americans, these stars weren't just actors. They were icons. They defined beauty, glamour, and the new, dazzling American dream. Together, radio and movies created something America had never seen before: a truly national popular culture. People weren't just entertained. They were connected by shared stories, songs, and spectacular performances. A man in Alabama could laugh at the same joke as a woman in Oregon. A child in Detroit could imitate the same dance move they saw in the movie that weekend. This cultural boom didn't just bring joy, it gave people a sense of belonging, a sense of shared experience. In a rapidly changing age, mass media became an anchor. Something familiar, something thrilling, something that reminded Americans that even as their world was changing, they were in it together. Do you remember the feeling of gathering with family to listen to the radio? Or the first time seeing a talkie on the big screen? Those moments shaped many of our childhood memories. And just as radio and movies connected people, how Americans moved and explored the world was also undergoing a spectacular transformation. Travel takes off. How the 1920s changed how we saw the world. As life in the 1920s got faster, louder, and bolder, so did the way people got from one place to another. It was a decade of movement, not just in the distances people traveled, but in how they experienced the world beyond their doorstep. And one of the boldest new frontiers? Air travel. In the early 1920s, commercial aviation was still very much in its infancy. Flying wasn't something most people considered safe, or even sane. Planes were small, noisy, and drafty. Cabin pressurization? Not invented yet. The truth is, if you were brave enough to board one of those early planes, you'd find yourself in a cramped metal tube with about 20 seats, surrounded by engine noise and cold air while the plane bounced and swayed through the unpredictable sky. But for the brave few who dared, there was a thrill in the adventure. Now you could soar over the countryside in a matter of hours instead of days. Cities that once felt distant were suddenly within reach. Yes, it wasn't comfortable, and yes, it was expensive, but flying offered something priceless: a glimpse of the future. Now, if you wanted something more comfortable and even a bit more romantic, you might have taken to the skies in a different way: dirigibles or airships. While they wouldn't truly become popular until the 1930s, some luxury travelers in the 20s began boarding these floating giants. Inside, they found plush lounges, dining areas, and panoramic windows. Dirigibles moved slowly, but they offered a serenity that airplanes couldn't match. It was travel for those who preferred grace over speed. However, for the average American in the 1920s, the gold standard of travel wasn't in the air. It was still on the ground. This was the golden age of the railroad. Railroads had connected the country for a long time, but by the 1920s, they were more than just functional transportation. They had become luxurious. Picture it. You're boarding a sleek silver train at a downtown station. A porter tips his hat as you step into your private sleeping compartment, with crisp white linens and polished wood panels. Later, you'd dine on roasted chicken and fresh bread in a white linened dining car, surrounded by chandeliers and the steady rhythm of the wheels on the tracks. Observation cars offered leather armchairs and landscapes whizzing by through wide glass windows. It wasn't just travel, it was an experience. Whether you were crossing the Great Plains or gliding through mountain ranges, train travel in the 20s was a celebration of comfort and class. The perfect way to see America in style. And for those closer to home, city transit was also evolving. Urban areas were rapidly expanding their subway and elevated train systems, making it easier than ever to get around the city without a car. These systems were getting faster, cleaner, and more reliable. You could hop on a train in the morning and be downtown in minutes. No horses, no carriages, no traffic jams. For millions of city dwellers, this convenience brought a new sense of freedom, independence, and rhythm to their daily lives. Looking back, the 1920s weren't just about wild nights and jazz tunes. They were the beginning of a more connected world than ever before. Whether you were flying through the clouds, gliding on steel rails, or traveling underground in the city, one thing was clear. People yearned to explore. They didn't just want to live. They wanted to go places. Easier movement didn't just affect how we traveled far, but it also changed the very places we lived and how we spent our free time. Let's explore the transformation of cities and how we shopped and played in the next section. Cities rise, retail changes, and a new American lifestyle is born. The 1920s didn't just transform how Americans moved or entertained themselves, they also reshaped where they lived and how they lived. One of the biggest demographic shifts of the decade was the steady migration of people from rural farms to bustling cities. For generations, America had been a nation of small towns and wide open fields. But now, the call of opportunity echoed from the skyscraper canyons of New York, Chicago, Detroit, and many others. Young people packed their bags, left the countryside behind, and headed off in search of something more. A job, a thrill, a new beginning. And cities, in turn, transformed to welcome them. Construction boomed. Skylines changed almost overnight. Towers of steel and concrete rose where there had once been only two-story buildings. Architects reached for the clouds, and cities began taking on the iconic shapes we still recognize today. The urban landscape didn't just expand outwards, it grew upwards. As more people flocked to the cities, the retail culture began to evolve alongside them. The small-town general store, once the heart of every community, now faced stiff competition. Chain stores, like Woolworth's, began popping up on every street corner. These businesses offered a wider selection and lower prices, thanks to the power of mass production and nationwide distribution. This was the beginning of big retail, and shoppers began expecting more, both in terms of price and presentation. And then came the rise of the department store. In major cities, names like Macy's, Marshall Field's, and Wanamaker's became more than just places to buy things. They were commercial palaces. You could walk in and find polished marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, seasonal window displays, and entire floors dedicated to fashion, home goods, toys, cosmetics, anything you could imagine. But shopping wasn't just about buying things anymore. It was an experience. For the growing middle class, strolling through a department store became a way to pass time, socialize, and admire the glamour of modern life. Going to Macy's was almost like going to the theater. People dressed up to go. Kids dreamed about it. In many ways, it was the new cathedral of downtown, a temple of convenience and aspiration. However, the city didn't just change where people lived or what they bought. It also transformed how they spent their leisure time. Americans in the 1920s had more free time than ever before. The workday shortened, wages gradually increased, and weekends became something to enjoy, not just recover from. And with affordable cars now in the hands of the middle class, one place became the ultimate weekend destination: the beach. Before cars, beach vacations were mostly for the wealthy, but now families could pile into their Fords and drive to the coast. Suddenly, the beach wasn't a place just for the elite. It became America's. And they weren't just places to cool off. They were a cultural shift. Swimsuits got shorter, lighter, more practical. A tan, once seen as a sign of manual labor, suddenly became fashionable, even desirable. Bronze skin and seaside fun were now signs that you had made it, not just to the coast, but into modern life. Picnics on the sand, piers buzzing with games and music, and kids running after the waves. It was a far cry from the rigid Victorian values of just one generation before. Taken together, these changes in urban life, consumer habits, and leisure activities paint a vivid picture of an America in motion. An America redefining itself. The old ways weren't necessarily forgotten, but they were being reshaped, modernized, reimagined for a world that seemed to promise something new around every corner. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that in just 10 short years, life changed so rapidly? From how we traveled, how we entertained ourselves, to how we spent time with family and friends. It truly was a decade full of energy and breakthroughs. What do you think? Out of all the inventions or social changes from the 1920s, which do you think had the biggest impact on our lives today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories and perspectives. And that concludes our quick trip through one of the most extraordinary decades in American history, the Roaring Twenties. We've seen a nation at its peak exploding with energy and innovation, from rebellious speakeasies defying prohibition, to a revolution on wheels reshaping roads and cities. From radios broadcasting the latest music, to silver screens filled with glamorous stars. We've traveled in luxurious train cars, strolled into dazzling department stores, and felt the sand under our feet as the beach became everyone's playground, not just the wealthy's. It was a time when everything seemed possible. The future felt bright, fast, and full of promise. But just as the decade was ending in 1929, something changed. The music gradually faded, the laughter quieted, and the next chapter of American life would look very, very different. Next, we'll dive into the harsh reality of the 1930s, a period full of hardship, but also resilience and transformation. How did Americans cope? How did they survive and even rise in the face of the Great Depression? Join us. The journey of historical discovery has just begun. Wells Beach, Maine, 1938. Manhattan skyline from Brooklyn, 1936. Girl on the bumper of a 1931 Chevrolet. Kids on the running board of a 1936 Pontiac. Modeling in front of a 1930s Willys. New York Stock Exchange, 1929. U.S. Highway 99, California. New York City, 1936. Washington, D.C., 1934. Kramer's Wigwam Gas Station, Browning, Montana, 1935. (1930) Police cruiser and 2 motorcycle cops. Seattle, Washington. Carpenter Drive-In, Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles. (1937) DeSoto parked next to a Model T up. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Coke delivery trucks, Lexington, Kentucky, 1935. Zier Diner, South Los Angeles, 1931. Blackwood Service Station, California. (1933) Plymouth and Bathing Beauty. Westinghouse Trade Show, Lexington, Kentucky, 1933. (1931) Ford at Paul's Place gas station. Publicity shot for the Frank Dillon Tire Company. Tanker Service Station, Minneapolis, Minnesota. An early drive-in theater. Kingston, New York, 1934. Glendale, California, 1936. Ed Couch, Texas, 1939. California Service Station, 1934. Marcus Motors, Denver, Colorado, 1938. '34 Ford picked up by manual crank tow truck. Modeling seat covers for 1933. Simon's Drive-In, Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles. Delivery of the new 1936 Buicks. (1936) Jensen with Ford Vi-8. The Corner Service Station. Post Office, Glen Ellen, Illinois. Around the Campfire at Huntington Beach, California. Food Line in New York City, 1931. J.J. Hickey Gas Station, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 1938. Michigan, 1940. Orpheum Theater, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1933. New York City Docks, 1935. Cool Motor Gas Station, Cleveland, Ohio, 1939. Dallas, South Dakota, 1936. (1938) Oldsmobile at San Francisco Bay Bridge. Leaving South Dakota, 1936. Gulf Service Station, 1931. Tenement House in Brockton, Massachusetts, 1940. Hamilton County, Tennessee, 1937. Relief Line in New York City, 1930. Elm Grove, Oklahoma, 1936. Central Park, New York City, 1933. Smithland, Iowa, 1937. Manhattan, 1932. Moving Day in North Florida, 1936. Florida, 1937. Kern County, California, 1938. Chandler, Arizona, 1940. Nipomo, California, 1936. Cincinnati, 1936. Autocamp, California, 1936. Winter Haven, Florida, 1937. Malheur County, Oregon, 1939. Person County, North Carolina, 1937. Smithfield, North Carolina, 1936. Supper in Dugout Home, New Mexico, 1940. Yakima Valley, Washington, 1936. roadside camp in Kern County, California, 1938. Pulaski County, Arkansas, 1935. Hamilton County, Ohio, 1935. California, 1939. Oklahoma, 1942. Workers' camp near Holtville, California, 1937. Pytown, New Mexico, 1940. Workers' Camp Sunday School, California, 1937. Tupelo, Mississippi, 1935. Thank you so much for joining us on this meaningful journey through time. We hope you enjoyed this video and gained some fascinating insights into life 100 years ago. If you loved this video, don't forget to hit that like button to support us. And be sure to share it with friends and family who you think would also enjoy exploring the past with us. Most importantly, subscribe to the Past Not Past channel right now so you don't miss our next historical adventure. We have many more fascinating stories waiting to be discovered. You can click on the videos appearing on the screen to watch more or revisit the journeys we've already taken. See you in the next video. Have a great day.